So this ongoing controversy at MSNBC, this was a really interesting thing.
They've terminated her contract, by the way.
Rachel Maddow?
No, Rona.
Oh, shoot.
Rona.
Oh, they did. Oh, for NBC, they terminated it.
Buyers
in the last 20 minutes or so.
Wow. All right. So breaking news. NBC has reversed itself and terminated the contract of Rona McDaniel Romney, the former chair of the RNC, who was, I think we can all agree she's an inveterate liar and did not bring any credibility. Frankly, from where I sit, of course, I would want no former Republicans on anywhere near television, period. And frankly, a lot of people who work in the administration, the Democratic administration, I could also do without. But I'm not in charge of any of these things. In fact, I have no influence on them whatsoever. This is pretty funny because this happened last night. And you can see, let me just say this. 20th anniversary of Air America. I had a little time where I worked with Rachel Maddow. She did a different time slot than I did, but we co-hosted together once or twice in a substitute situation. We were not friends. I felt like I had different politics than she did, and certainly a different style, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think she particularly cared for me either, to be honest with you.
Good. That's badge of honor.
No, I don't. I don't wear it as a badge of honor or a badge of dishonor. I don't. It's irrelevant. I have a social problem that I don't care about these things. But what I do find interesting about this is, and I think even when she was first hired, Keith Olbermann wrote something in Daily Kos because he was basically responsible for getting hired. That she was, he didn't use the word careerist, but he implied as a positive because it's a business that she's in. But she is, her job is to stay as close to the leadership of MSNBC as possible. That's how she's gotten her sort of massive contracts and whatnot. In addition, obviously, she's very popular with the MSNBC audience. But here she is basically both knocking the hire, protecting the CEO of MSNBC or the president of MSNBC, who 100%, regardless of what's said here, didn't just say, I'm neutral along this hire. Although, Maddow is very careful to say something that's true, but not complete. McDaniel does not get hired at NBC News without a sign-off from the president of MSNBC because of the structure of their news department of the NBC News. That's just a fact. I just know it. And Maddow's very careful to protect the president of MSNBC, but then also attacks Rona McDaniel. And I bet you this also led to NBC terminating the thing because it created more firestorm in their news division. Here it is.
It's my understanding that MSNBC's leadership did not object to Rona McDaniel being hired by NBC News when the matter first arose. But when the hiring was announced, and MSNBC staff...
Now look, you can both not object and, in fact, say, yes, this would be a good idea. And if I just report that they did not object, I am telling the truth. But I'm not necessarily doing full reporting here.
Yeah.
I just want to point that out. No, maybe she doesn't have an understanding as to what their response is, but I'm quite sure she knows how this works. But understand, it was Sunday when Chuck Todd went on Meet the Press and laid into MSNBC brass.
Right.
Here she is.
But when the hiring was announced and MSNBC staff essentially unanimously and instantly expressed outrage, our leadership at MSNBC heard us understood and adjusted course. We were told this weekend in clear terms, Rona McDaniel will not be on our air. Rona McDaniel will not be on MSNBC. And I say that and give you that level of detail because there has been an effort since by other parts of the company to muddy that up in the press and make it seem like that's not what happened at MSNBC. I can assure you that is what happened at MSNBC. Rona McDaniel will not appear on MSNBC. So says our boss since Saturday, and it has never been anything other than clear. And I will also say, if you care what I think about this, I will tell you the fact that Ms. McDaniel is on the payroll at NBC News, to me, that is inexplicable. I mean, you wouldn't hire a wise guy. You wouldn't hire a made man like a mobster to work at a DA's office, right? you wouldn't hire.
Let me just pause it for 1 second. Let me just say one thing about there wasn't tension between Rachel and I at Air America, but it was pretty clear to me how much she resented my ability to do a good metaphor where she could not. I'm just saying. Or for
because
I want to make this clear too.
Yeah.
She wrote that line.
Right. I was about to say, or for your ability to speak in extemporaneously, because she's like, there's the whole thing of like, and I will say, I'm just like, you are reading something.
No. She wrote every word that she said on the radio. Never mind on television. I mean, it was impressive because I was like, whoa, she laid out her script for an entire 2 or 3 hour show. And I'm like, what? I mean, this is the extent in which I write stuff out. So I was impressed, and I can't even read half of it. But that's not a great metaphor if you had time to come up with it beforehand.
I will say, Sam.
Good, but she's got 2 of them.
Like a wise guy. You wouldn't hire a made man like a mobster to work at a DA's office.
Pause it for 1 second. Right? I also want to say, in fact, a lot of times they do.
I think Joseph Kennedy, JFK's dad, was like famously.
No, but I think a lot of times, we've seen this many, many times. They do hire former criminals because, not only do they get information, but you see this all the time. Security firms hiring former burglars. I mean,
hackers, yeah.
Yeah, hackers, certainly. I mean,
or allegedly for current mobsters to, go down or I guess it's not alleged, and assassinate Castro, for example.
Yeah,
right?
It's conceivably. I don't know if that was the DA's office that did that.
I know, but yeah.
But I'm being a little bit pedantic here, and I apologize.
Man, like a mobster to work at a DA's office, right? you wouldn't hire a pickpocket to work as a TSA screener. And so I find the decision to put her on the payroll.
Pause it for 1 second.
Inexplicable.
The TSA screeners, you're supposed to empty your pockets before you go through the thing.
Oliver Twist would be the best TSA employee in history. He would catch all of those Muslims, terrorists.
They take out their stuff out of their pockets for you.
You don't need to be a pickpocket if you're going to steal.
Yeah.
But this was not the source of any type of tension. I want to say at Air America, 20th anniversary of the Majority Report.
Stylistically.
It's just like, there was a lot of times people come by like, I need a metaphor, Sam. And she was not one of those people.
It is
She would not come by. That's good.
Yes.
And so I find the decision to put her on the payroll inexplicable. And I hope they will reverse their decision. And it's not about, Democratic Party, Republican Party. It's not about partisanship. It's not about right versus left. It's not about being a political professional versus some other kinds of person. It's not about being mean or nice to journalists. It's not about just being associated with Donald Trump and his time in the Republican Party. It's not even about lying or not lying. It's about our system of government and undermining elections and going after democracy as an ongoing project, right? And this is a difficult time for us as a country. And I think
the part at the beginning that I found notable was her little dig at Chuck Todd, but
It's
other parts of
unclear
the-
to me if that's a dig at Chuck Todd.
Yeah.
When she says that the other parts of this company,
Yeah.
it's unclear to me whether she's talking about MSNBC or if she's talking about NBC trying to spin something differently. But the fact that she says it was super clear on Saturday and Chuck Todd went on Sunday. Now, Meet the Press is an NBC show, but it does play on MSNBC. So I don't know.
The Max Tani of Semaphore's been doing some really good reporting on the media, and he said that he spoke to certain people at NBC, and this is in his article. Companies like Comcast, Disney, and Warner Media, which dominate U.S. television, got an object lesson in presidential revenge during the last Trump administration. Trump reportedly demanded that the Justice Department sue to block the merger of AT&T and Time Warner. The lawsuit failed, though the merger also quickly unraveled. Executives are concerned at the possibility that Trump could take revenge on the company, a high-profile NBC employee told Semaphore. So essentially, they're worried about a Trump presidency, and they were trying to secure, to fortify things and have somebody who has some Trump administration contacts.
The irony is, though, is that Trump hated her by the end.
I know,
That's what
but
I'm saying. No one's going to defend her now that she's out. The right's going to be like, oh, they're censoring our champion, Rona McDaniel.
but they're trying to have it both ways.
Well, they're
trying
looking
to appeal.
for a way to reach into the White House and to get a bulwark against any type of weaponization of the regulatory apparatus of the country against them. And look,
Well, not alienating their audience by hiring I don't know. I mean, Scott Pruitt or something that's not even a good person to point to, but somebody who has institutional Republican credibility, but and connections with the Trump people, but isn't on her face offensive person, but they miscalculated because people freaked out. Even though I'm just baffled that this is the internal reaction within NBC, when we said this before, but they have John Brennan or whatever as a contributor, these people that supported torture and war crimes.
You
No
have the
one
answer there.
cares.
You have
I
the
know.
answers there. They
I
thought
know.
they're doing this out of a defensive posture. They
Yeah.
need to sort of lard up and pay people off who have access, not necessarily to Trump himself, but maybe into these agencies that can slow any type of regulatory push. I mean, but this dynamic has been in existence for a long, long time. And I remember one of my early frustrations when I first started doing the Majority Report. This was around the time of the one of the Jacksons, I can't remember her name, had her wardrobe malfunction.
Janet.
And there was a huge issue as to whether the FCC was going to crack down on CBS. And it was all sort of all of the news was centered around this. And in fact, and I remember hearing NPR doing a story on this as if this was the real story. The real story was that the networks and entertainment industry was trying to get even more consolidated. And the FCC and the federal government could have stepped in and said, from an antitrust perspective, this is a problem.
Yeah.
We now have at that time, I think it was 7 major corporations owning every single television outlet. Now probably it's 3 or 4. And the wardrobe malfunction was sort of the shiny thing for the rubes to think the FCC is really cracking down on stuff. But in fact, no. The government's cracking down when it doesn't allow corporations to have concentration of power. And these are stories that you will not hear from these corporate outlets. It's just the reality. They will not cover these stories because they're owned by these people. At that time, GE owned 51% of MSNBC and NBC. GE is the biggest weapons manufacturer in the country. And when people tried to talk about the Iraq War at the time, they were fired or they were just, told you don't do that.